Oh, we are back for 2026. Hello and welcome to the round so far. I'm Xander, McGuire, and I'm joined in studio by a very special guest to dissect all of the action from this week. And he needs no introduction. 2018 Brownlow medalist Tom Mitchell, of course, 2023 Premiership player for the Mighty Pies. Welcome to the team at afl.com.au.
Good to be here, Xander. On debut tonight, so I'll be led by your guidance and looking forward to dissecting all the games so far.
And by the way, if we didn't need any more convincing that Tom is a man of the highest work ethic, had his first child today, this morning. So congratulations on behalf of everyone, Tom.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, straight from the hospital. I wanted to be here with you. The missus wasn't as happy with that, but this is where I want to be with you right now.
All right, well, let's get stuck into a slightly smaller story than that, which is probably one of the best games of the year and of recent memory, which was the Bulldogs coming from behind, showing so much heart to knock off the back-to-back premiers and the premiership favourites for this year. We're witnessing sort of the last moments here. Tom, talk us through how they got this done.
It was just so good to have a quality game of footy back, wasn't it? Two quality teams. Clearly the Dogs last year copped a lot of flack for not competing with top 8 teams, and they've knocked off the back-to-back premiers. So the finish of this game was everything a footy fan was after: high scoring, big pivotal moments, and went right down to the wire. So just such good footy to watch. What
a beautiful kick from Ed Richards, who was an absolute superstar out there off the back of a great cameo for Victoria. You mentioned they didn't really have success against the top tier teams, and that was the big knock on them. 2-8 they were against top 9 sides. It's early, but is this the sign of a team that's matured, that can go the distance and a lot further into September this year?
I think it is probably too early, Xander, to be making big statements, especially after just one game. But I'll tell you what these wins do. They give you a group a lot of belief, and you can see what it means to the fans to kick off the season well. I saw Sam Darcy mention the same thing post-game in a media press conference he did. So clearly it means a lot to the players. You go to an away game at the Gabba, probably one of the hardest asks in footy. You get a good win. It just gives so much belief to the group.
There was one moment in the dying moments there which might cause a bit of discussion around this stand rule. There were a number of 50-metre penalties that were given away during this game. This wasn't one of them. Dane Zorko and Joel Frazier there duking it out. That's about 20 seconds left. Do you think that was a 50 that went begging for the Lions?
I don't think it was. I think Zorko looked to play on, and then Frazier probably followed suit. So I think the umpire probably took some common sense into his decision-making there. But the stand rule is going to be something that's going to be watched very closely this year, and probably will be some more 50 metres played over the course of the year.
And a note that was made by some that were commentating that game was that it felt like it was a bit harsher in the Saturday night game compared to the Thursday and the Friday and the Saturday day. So as we know, these rules tend to take a bit of a life of their own as the season goes on. So a big watch on the stand rule. Now, when you need a bit of motivation and a spark, it's often the man that you don't expect. Stewie Dew in the 2008 Grand Final, for instance. And today it was Bailey Williams. Is this one of the better goals that you've seen?
We called this watching the game out the back, didn't we, Xander? I think it is. I'm not sure what the prize is for winning goal of the year. It might be 50K with a few frequent flyer points. Yeah. But if I was a Doggies player, I'd be, buddying up with him, and hopefully he can take you on a end-of-season trip to Europe with that sort of goal. He sold a fair bit of candy, and what an incredible goal to kick off the year.
And a pivotal moment of the game as well. 20 points to the margin at that point with about a minute and a half left in the third quarter. I mean, From your experience, what does that do to lift a group, especially when you're going into a three-quarter time huddle and for belief of a team that's already the underdog?
I think in big games, there's always moments. They can be inspirational acts, whether they be with toughness, putting your head over it, going back with the flight. But a special goal does lift the energy as well. And he had a flying shot not long after. If he kicked back-to-back goals, it would have been even more special back-to-back passages of play. But it does give the group a boost for sure.
Bailey Williams, hopefully that 50 grand goes into your pocket. One man who might be a little lighter in the pocket is Harris Andrews after this, or maybe he takes a 3-week holiday. He's accidentally hit Artie Jones in the head here. But the question is it a reportable offence? Jones ends up being concussed. And if the MRO decides that Andrews has intentionally struck him there, then he's probably looking at 3 weeks on the sideline. What's your take on that, looking at it now?
It is a tough one, isn't it? I don't think he clearly meant to concuss him or knock him out, but it is an interesting act to throw the elbow back. They are clamping down on things like gut punches and things, but you could make a case that that's almost worse, a flying elbow back. And if a player gets concussed, it's not a great look for the game. So I don't think he meant to do it. I think it was accidental, but sometimes the repercussions when there's a concussion can be quite serious.
On first glance, it feels like he's trying to block him from getting to the ball and just has no idea that it's at
Which is weird
level.
Though, because he wasn't blocking for a Brisbane teammate to go and collect the ball. He could have probably grabbed the ball himself. He was within a metre. So whether that goes against him in the argument, we'll have to wait and see.
So Jones was then on the bench. Of course, we don't have the sub rule anymore. 5 on the bench. Jones hit the pine, and that was after Hugh McCluggage went out of the game quite early, which is a big story. Early in the first quarter here, I think McCluggage had 4 disposals for the game, and you can see him highlighted there, just limping off to the bench, pinged his calf early on there. An interesting subtext to this, which my understanding is we've heard that there are a number of players that clubs are a little bit dirty because they played more than they probably should have in State of Origin. And my understanding is that McCluggage was one of those players that his club, the Lions, felt like he probably played a little bit more game time than they were expecting. I had to look back at the numbers. He played 83% game time in State of Origin, which was the 3rd most for the Vicks. He was then managed through those 2 practice matches, only getting 45% game time against the Suns last week, and then this happens. I mean, we knew that this would be something that we'd talk about. There's been so many State of Origin injuries. Your take? It's probably not a killer for the game.
I don't buy into that. I think that was 3 weeks ago. Origin was quite a bit of time ago now, and also I think if you're a player and you put your hand up to play, you're always at risk of injury. And he's been a very durable player over his whole career. I would say the last 3 or 4 years he's barely missed a game. So injuries are a part of the game, and the State of Origin conversation will continue to come up whether players should play for those pure reasons, whether you're missing games with your club. But I wouldn't say it's a factor. It was a while ago now.
I agree, to be honest. Like, you're probably just as likely to get injured in a scratch match as you are a State of Origin game. Let's go to the earlier Saturday game. GWS and Hawthorn and the Giants exacted a bit of elimination final revenge on the Hawks. Same place, same time slot, except the result was flipped, a 27-point win for the Giants, which takes us to our Saturday star. And there is nothing better than a contract year Jake Stringer.
No, you're right, Xander. It feels like every time he's out of contract, he pulls out his best form. So you can see some of the numbers popping up there. From his 14 touches, 11 of those created scores, or involved in scores, 5 goals, was very dynamic, powerful, around forward 50 stoppage. He kicked a few goals as well. So back to his best. And I think with some of the firepower out of the team, Cadman clearly out at the moment, Stringer stepped up, as did Riccardi, kicked 3 goals as well.
And just the way that he was leaping at the ball, like you say, Tommy, he was dynamic. It wasn't just little Joe the Goose out the backs. He was so powerful, as he has been throughout parts of his career. But this one's just as much of a story of who got the job done as it is how they got the job done without the people that weren't out there. And this GWS injury list has been one of the key stories of the pre-season. I mean, talk us through what they're missing, obviously, in experience and skill, but, leadership as well out on the ground. This is a massive
You can
list.
make a case, Xander, that all these 8 players are in the best team. Maybe Lee Kalir, we haven't seen as much of him, but you talk about a guy like Tom Green. What great timing to get Clayton Oliver into your team to, fill that void. Tom Green's also their top score involvement and goal assist player, which, people may not know. He's renowned as, the best contest player, which he is. But Darcy Jones, Brent Daniels, these guys are great score involvement players. Cadman clearly kicked over 40 goals last year. So, have the depth to get a good win against a quality oppo in Hawthorn is something they'll be super pumped with.
And the Hawks without a couple, but that's seriously extensive.
Yeah.
Now, you were quite interested in the way that the Giants actually got this done and where Hawthorn conceded goals, and there was a bit of work to do around forward stoppages. Yeah,
definitely. I think this was something that they spoke about internally last season, Hawthorn. There was back-to-back weeks where they were getting scored heavily against their defensive 50 stoppage. So, typically a couple of goals a game is a lot, but they've had 4 kicked on them in the first game of the season. So I don't think that's the main reason they lost, but you look at the margin, it's around 4 or 5 goals. You take out the D50 goals against, the game's pretty close. But I think purely the game was mostly won, around the ground in contests. They got smashed at ground ball, I think minus 19 for the game. Even the uncontested mark differential, the first half, I think, in the second quarter, Giants had 35 marks. They had 20 more for the game, so they beat them both on the inside and the outside. They beat Hawthorn at their own game.
And what a goal that was from Clayton Oliver, his first goal in orange colours. He was one of the midfielders that was on the market in the trade period. Obviously, Hawthorn went really hard after Zach Merritt, didn't get him. Will Day does his shoulder in the pre-season. You talk about their stoppage work. Do you feel like the Hawks are one key midfielder short of being a real contender come the last Saturday in September, or are they in the frame?
Yeah, I think that's the narrative, and it's probably true. John Newcombe is a star, and he leads from the front and is an A-grader, but I just wonder who else is an A-grader in that midfield. They do have depth and a lot of good players, but I think, they're craving Will Day to get back and be that second A-grader to complement John Newcombe, but missing out on Merritt, may come back to haunt them. We'll see. I still think they're going to be a great team this year, but I just think their depth, other than Newcombe, where do they go with that?
Well, they didn't feel like the Hollywood Hawks out there, but there were Hollywood stars in the crowd. We'd have had Rob Lowe was at the Pies, Sydney Sweeney was at the Swans, but Tom Hanks has probably got to be the biggest star we've seen at the footy in a long time.
What's your favourite Tom Hanks movie, Xander? Because I'm going Forrest Gump for me.
Yeah, Forrest Gump. I'm a Forrest Gump guy. I didn't mind Castaway.
Okay.
He had Wilson, the beach ball there, and he's got his co-star there as well, Tom Hanks as well, Stephen Graham. And he's got the goal umpire
Forrest
stuff
going.
Forrest Gump, exactly, yeah. It was pretty good work from Tom. So we love that we're growing the game. We've got Paco Luciano growing the game in America and Tom Hanks as well, which we love. So good stuff from Tom, and great to see him enjoying Sydney as he's filming a new movie, Greyhound 2 up there, I think. So great stuff. Now, to Friday night footy, Gold Coast and Geelong, and this was probably, well, in my view at least, the most surprising result of the round. Maybe not in terms of win and loss, but just the margin, the way it was done. 56 points it was in the end, but at one stage in the third quarter, they were up by 85 points, and the architect of it largely was Christian Petrarca in his first game as a Gold Coast Sunny. It was just incredible, wasn't it?
He was. This was the highest rated game of his career. Even, you take into account his Norm Smith medal match-winning performance in 2021 against the Dogs, but this game's rated higher. So he looked fit and dynamic and ready, didn't he? He strikes me as the type of guy that would have been filthy not being picked for State of Origin. He's a quality player, and I think, he probably had a bit of a chip on his shoulder, and he played like that too. So, what a great pick up for the Suns. You pair him up with Humphrey up forward as those dynamic half-forward flanks, and Rao didn't even play. We got to remember that too. Yep. Noah Anderson, their top-end talent is seriously damaging.
He felt like he was so pumped up, Petrarca. There was that vision of him dump tackling Max Holmes. I was on the boundary right next to where that happened. He got up and he just stared, bored holes through his skull. The standover was on for young and old. And, the disposal efficiency piece as well for Petrarca. He spoke about how much he worked on his kicking through the pre-season. He teams up with Bailey Humphrey, who's just emerged as a genuine superstar. Do you feel like, with Petrarca, and if Jamara can get going as well, he kicked 6 in the VFL against Southport on the same day, that Gold Coast can go that extra step or two, and they're actually emerging as one of the preeminent powerhouses of the competition?
I think that's the way it's looking, Xander, isn't it? Especially you go off that performance, playing against a grand finalist in last year in the Cats, who are a great oppo. I think traditionally Gold Coast have always started seasons well. So last year they went 8-2 to start. Even in the years in their formation years when they weren't making finals and things, they always started seasons well. So I think it's too small of a sample size to make a big statement like that, but it's looking that's the way it's going to go. The
Cats admittedly weren't at their best, and a large part of that was the turnover game on their part, and you've looked into this. Really a dog of a night for the Cats.
Yeah, we used the word mulligan out the back before, didn't we, Xander? So 91 points against on turnover, which is the third most in Chris Scott's coaching career. So, yeah, look, I'm not too worried about the Cats. I think, they've got runs on the board for decades, and if they're not worried, they're not panicking, then, why should we really? And, you take out Cameron, Dangerfield. I know personnel isn't everything, but it does mean something. So I think maybe a touch underprepared. Typically when teams do go really deep into the finals, I know this being at Collingwood a couple of times, deep into finals, you can start the season a bit shaky, but I expect them to build into the season really strongly and still be very strong this year.
Well, we've heard it from us. Let's have a listen to what Chris Scott had to say after that smashing.
We're pretty calm, I think. It was obviously a really difficult night, but the most important thing for us is to take what we need to out of it and move forward. We knew we had some problems going in, and we were really wary of what the opposition could do, and in some ways we probably needed them to be a little bit off, and they were the opposite. A few guys coming back will help, but I don't think it certainly won't be the only answer.
Chris Scott, of course, had that extended leave in the pre-season, which became a massive talking point. As the season came closer, of course, they copped that smashing, and it's going to be a talking point again. What I'm quite interested in there is Scott says they'll have a couple back. It won't have much of an impact. Do you feel like they're too reliant, Geelong, on some of their superstars? They had no Danger and no Jeremy Cameron, of course. Are they too reliant on those guys?
Potentially. They're ageing stars. Tom Stewart's another superstar and has been for a long time. You wonder the importance of James Warple, who's been recruited to the club, Tanner Bruin, who's back this year. This next younger brigade, Bailey Smith obviously had a star season last year, Max Holmes, whether they can really start to carry the torch for the club when the older statesmen move on.
Thursday night footy was the opener at the SCG. It was Sydney and Carlton. It was a grudge match. Charlie Curnow against his old side. Will Hayward and Ollie Florin against their old side. Carlton were up at half-time, and then the third quarter came around, and it was an absolute blitz, a disaster for the Blues. 12 goals to 4 it was. Talk us through how this game changed so quickly, Tom.
Yeah, well, I think the way that Carlton have recruited clearly is to bring some more speed, and the personnel that's come in clearly is Hayward, Florin, Ainsworth, Jagger Smith's in, Walsh looks fit, so clearly a more running-based transition team, and it looked really good for them in the first half. They opened the field up, and they looked really damaging when they went forward. But what can happen is if you're not really damaging with ball in hand and you want to open and stretch the field, if you're not skillful enough to get through, the holes on defence are bigger. And that's what happened in the third quarter. The Swans went plus 49 for the quarter. If you leave Errol Goulden and these type of guys in too much space, they're just going to damage you. And I think we've got some clips coming up shortly. Here's a couple here. You can see Goulden there free, just to on the red logo there. Yep, we've circled them. But you can't leave quality players in this much space, and clearly some breakdowns in Carlton's team defence. And if you look where the ball is right now, if you were to pause it, there's only 6 players for Carlton behind the ball there. So Carlton effectively are defending with 6 players, when they should be defending with at least 10. Even here, you can see how flat Carlton's defence is. Their last player in line should be even deeper towards this orange painted 50 here. So again, they've just crossed halfway through the field from kick-out situation. They're playing 5-on-5 in a half of footy. So to me, Carlton are trying to make the ground big, but it's hurting them too much on defence. I don't think they've got the skill to get through and punish teams before they're getting punished.
So based on that vision that you've just showed us, do you forecast a dark year ahead for the Blues, or is that something that can be a quick fix?
I don't want to be someone who makes big statements. We've got a few in the industry that do that, Xander. So I think they'll bounce back. I think they're going to probably win next week against Richmond. I think with any game style shift, you can't expect a change and impact to happen straight away. So, you could make a case that, they stuck with the game plan in the second half. Clearly it didn't work, but clearly they're changing the way that they're playing. Last year they were a long down the line, contest-based team. They've identified it's not working. They're trying something different. Now
we need to talk about Charlie. First game back, there was a few blues early on. Patrick Cripps got stuck into him, but he ultimately had the last laugh. Obviously the Swans winning. He kicked 3. How did you grade his performance first up?
I think he would be pretty stoked from a personal point of view for him, kicking a couple of goals and being a part of a big win against his old team. He wasn't probably the deciding factor. McInerney had a career night. Errol Goulden, again, the usuals. But yeah, for Charlie to pop up, kick 3, to get that one out of the way. I know moving clubs a couple of times, whenever you play against your old team, there's some serious nerves and anxiety around that. And I think he acknowledged that post-game. But I think, what a pick-up for them. He's probably what they were craving, getting a key forward. And they've had success over the years, bringing in big key forwards to the club and going deep in finals.
You mentioned that he's one that's switched sides, but Carlton's side looks so different in round 1 of this year compared to what it did in round 24 of last year. We'll start with the guys that are out because there's 13 changes, if you can believe that. More than half the side is different. There's obviously guys like Blake Acres and Lucas Campriali and other names that you see on there that are still on the list but aren't quite right. Jesse Motlop's done his knee. But there's also guys like Tom De Koning who have left the club, Silvani, Curnow, on that list but have played pivotal roles in Carlton's lineup. But they had a massive trade period too. Talk us through some of the guys that were out there on Thursday night that came into the club in the off-season technically. Mitch McGovern's obviously been there too, but what they bring to this club.
Ainsworth was one we didn't mention before, Xander, and he did some really, really nice things, didn't he? He kicked a couple of goals and looked pretty powerful. But back to what we were touching on before, a change of game style and a change of personnel, that's a recipe for things just not working. Those things do take time. So, I don't know how Carlton are going to go this year, but I think the second half fade-outs are a concern. I think that's both a system issue and also they probably don't have enough leadership in the team to think, when things and the tide's going against them to turn that. I think you need quality senior players with real mental toughness to flip that. So there's a few issues there, but, I do expect them to bounce back.
And what is it, 6 times last year that the Blues led at half-time and then went on to lose, and they start the season in that fashion as well, which puts the pressure on Michael Voss if those sort of things continue. Now, you mentioned that the Richmond are coming up. We've got the Carltons next month ahead of us there. Richmond, the bye, Melbourne and North Melbourne. It's a pretty soft start to the year. What's a pass mark for the next month for Carlton to get the pressure off Vossi?
Is this my role in media land now? I've got to have a few stabs, don't I?
Well, for me, I think that Carlton probably have to win all 3, or maybe they go down to Melbourne by a small margin.
You want it to be 3-1 after Yeah, okay.
I think with those three ahead,
or at least 2-2, you would say. There's some very winnable games. Yeah, you know what? You're probably right. Yeah, there could be. You can already feel the pressure mounting, which is bizarre to say after opening round.
Yep.
But that's the reality of a big club like Carlton. When they don't produce results, this is what happens. So I think they'd be wanting to get going pretty early in the year.
And like you say as well, it's a new game plan. There's new personnel, but the Carlton factor is real, and the pressure will be coming from Michael Voss in a contract year as well. All right, Sunday night. Massive game at the MCG, shaping to be the biggest crowd that St Kilda has ever played in front of for a home and away game. They're expecting about 85,000. The Pies, the Saints, what do you make of that matchup?
It's going to be fascinating. I think, the Saints recruits they've brought in, Ryan, Silvani, decoding, Flanders, these type of guys. I think the Saints fans will be wanting to see an impact straight away. I'm not sure. I think the Saints they still haven't shown anything the last couple of years in terms of going to rise up the ladder. Hopefully the recruits can do that for them. But I still think Collingwood are a proven side. They went to the prelim last year, 5 goals away from a grand final. It's going to be a fascinating watch. I do think that the Pies pre-season injuries do hurt them, with Moore and Howe clearly out. But Niggles to Houston, Schultz, McStay, McCreary over the pre-season. Quainer was another. They've had match stimulation minutes, but I don't think they're in tip-top shape and hitting the ground running. So it's a flip of the coin for me. I'm very interested to see how the game goes. Yeah,
I think the first time in Craig McRae's coaching career that he's been without both Darcy Moore and Jeremy Howe. So a massive watch there. Jack Buller, the club debutant. So much to look forward to. That's been the round so far. The Pies and the Saints on Sunday night, and then round 1 to follow, full of blockbusters all around the country instead of just the Northern States and the G. Tom, thanks so much for joining us. I take it you won't be at the G, you'll be back with the family.
Yeah, I better get back to the baby after this.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll catch you next week.